Hey there, welcome. It is good to see you tonight. I'm glad you're with me. Just a quick little sound check. Can you hear me okay? Can you see the screen okay? Everything's set up right? Let me know in the chat box. Yeah, yes. Don't you love it when tech works? Just gotta say. All right, so just a reminder for everyone who watches this on the replay to remember to like the video and drop a comment, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel. Right, let's make these videos visible to more people. Let's get iridology out there. That's what this is all about. All right, so I would just love to know as we're beginning, how many of you are trained in constitutional iridology already? And so give me a yes if you are, and just give me a no if you're not. Joe is, of course, Janina is, Vanessa is. Yeah, okay. All right, so some of you are already have training in constitutional. Fantastic. Let's go ahead with this then. Yeah, most of you, it looks like. Okay, so we're gonna go a bit deeper today, and I hope that that you get something useful out of this. Just a little bit about myself. Voted the Instructor of the Year by IPA in 2022, and at their conference in February of this year, I was voted the IPA Iridologist of the Year for 2024. I'm pretty excited about that. Last time I checked, which was last week, there were still only 10 level 3 certified instructors in the world, and so that's very cool. Very cool indeed that I am one of those, and I really love it. I really love it. My badge is proving that I am an IPA level 3 certified iridologist and instructor. I've been in the holistic health industry since 1980. Started getting interested in the late 70s when I was a teenager. Do the math if you want. And yeah, and then branched off and didn't finish university to be a school teacher, but instead had the opportunity to become a health professional working with herbs and nutrition and iridology. So I've designed and taught many different kinds of iridology and herbal and health wellness courses over the years. And right now my love is teaching all things to do with iridology. So besides my clinical work, and you can see my office behind me, this is where I actually see my clients. Besides the clinical work, I teach a lot of courses, and I really do love teaching. Even when I'm in my one-on-one work, I consider that to be private mentorship, not me playing like I know everything, right? It's me guiding and coaching and teaching my clients one-on-one. So at the end of our time together today, I'm going to give you information on how to join me for a constitutional iridology course. And yeah, if you're not already certified as a constitutional iridologist and you want to get certified, I have the course that can prepare you for that. And I can walk with you to get your IPA certification if you don't have that already. I am also a nutrition professional and a master herbalist, and these are the organizations I am affiliated with. This is one of my students. I am just doing the happy dance today. This is after Kimberly did certified as an iridologist with IPA. She just today completed her level 3 certification exam and passed. Yes, yes. Okay, I get to do the happy dance with her, right? So this is what Kimberly said about the constitutional iridology course, which I call dynamic iridology. If you're wondering which iridology course to take, you can stop looking. You've found it. Judith Cobb is an excellent instructor with many years of experience. She's a caring and compassionate person who is dedicated to the field of iridology and her students. I personally practice both Eastern and Western physiology medicine and was very impressed with the layout of her program. She makes it easy for her students to balance work, life, and study. And again, she has just certified today. She did the test and she passed as a level 3 iridologist. So very excited to have her join those ranks with me. The next dynamic iridology course is starting in September 2025, but we're only a few weeks in on the February 27th cohort. So if you are looking for a certification course, a course that teaches you everything you need for the IPA certification exam, it includes all of the level 1 and level 2 curriculum that are required to sit for that exam. And if you want to just launch out of those starting blocks really quick, we need to have a conversation. You can go to this website, iridology.education/course-info. I'm just going to drop this down here for you in case you need that. There we go, in the chat box. And there's a way in there to set up a time to chat with me privately, to meet with me on Zoom, to talk about your goals and the course, and is this the right course for you? And again, if you are interested in getting just launched like a rocket, you might want to hop into the February 27th group. We've only had 2 modules so far, and we're doing number 3 tomorrow, and 3 is after number 3. Like before we get to number 4, we'll be cutting it off. Nobody else will be allowed to join because then it's just too much to catch up on, right? So there we go. All right, so let's look at this. So constitutional iridology. All right, so we're going to be quizzing you as we go here, since many of you already have training. What are these things called in constitutional iridology? These wrinkles that are coming around the eye, what are they called? I want to see it in the chat box. Yeah, Vanessa, well done. Contraction froze, absolutely. So today we are talking about contraction froze. In the dynamic iridology course / the IPA curriculum, you learn 7 different kinds of contraction froze. We're just going to do the overview of what they mean, generally speaking, today. We don't have time to go into all 7. What are some other things you've heard this marking called? Contraction froze is very specific to constitutional iridology. Maybe you've studied Jensenian iridology, or with PESIC, or with one of our European iridology leaders. What are the other names you've heard these called? Vanessa, you are so fast off that starting block. You have got lightning fingers. Well done. Stress rings, nerve rings, accomplishment rings. That's a nice way to put it. Anyone heard of them called anything else? Anyone? The only other one that I remember off the top of my head is cramp rings. Sensitivity rings, there you go, there's another one. All right, so we're going to debunk some myths about these. If you've hung out on social media at all, you've heard some really wackadoodle stuff, okay? And I'm calling it wackadoodle because it's what we believed 40 and 50 years ago and 60 years ago, and it's still out there, and it's just not going away, which is not good. But we need to start with looking at iris anatomy in order to understand contraction furrows well. So we're going to take an iris and we're going to cut it, and then we're going to look at that cut edge, that cut end of things. So we're going to be looking at a cross section of the cut side of this. So we've got the sclera here, we've got the pupil here, and we've got the cut edge of the iris here. We've got the pupil here, we've got the sclera here, and this is that cut edge looking at it end on. Does this make sense? I'm going to tell you, it took me 30 years of looking at this type of diagram to figure out what it was all about. One day it was like, now I get it. Right, so if it's not making sense, I totally empathize. Janine is saying it makes sense. So good, Janine, so glad to hear. So we've got the anterior border layer, which is the side that faces out. It's the side that has the pigment. That is where we determine, are you lymphatic, biliary, or hematogenic, correct? And then we've got the posterior epithelium that faces into the posterior chamber. So it's the back side of the iris. When we are looking at contraction furrows, this is what we are looking at. We are looking at the iris tissue has all buckled. There's a little buckle there. Now I want you to remember that what's important about this is contraction furrows are inherent. You're born with them, okay? You're born with them. And whether that is because you were exposed to a lot of neurotransmitters, adrenaline, noradrenaline in utero, and that affected things, whether you genetically are just more sensitive to those neurotransmitters, hormones that you make yourself, we don't know. So there's various reasons why these might be there. Ultimately, they are there because the pupil responds to the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, right? When you are having a sympathetic response, you are stressed out, you've got the adrenaline, you've got the noradrenaline, the pupil gets big, the iris tissue compresses, and it doesn't telescope, it wrinkles. It's like fabric. If you've got a piece of fabric laying on a table and you squeeze it in from both ends, it's going to wrinkle. That's exactly what happens here. But remember, prenatally, that iris tissue is very delicate. All the tissues are very delicate. And so if we are dilating that pupil and contracting the iris, and then the pupil goes into parasympathetic, so it gets small and that stretches out the iris tissue, and pupil gets big and the iris tissue is compressed, pupil gets small and the iris tissue is stretched, that's going to lead to these creases happening in the same place every time. I call them permacreases because that's what happens. Prenatally, they become permacreases as a result of all of that, the adrenaline, noradrenaline, sympathetic, parasympathetic reactions that go on in the body. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a makes sense in the comments box. Yeah, Michelle's saying, yeah, Vanessa, fantastic, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so the next three pictures we're going to look at are of the very same person, the same eye, the same camera, different light settings. Okay, so this first one, we had very little light. And you know what happens when you don't have enough light shining on the eye? The pupil gets big. Now, in this case, the camera was set to a very fast shutter speed to also reduce the amount of light on the image, but that's really not going to be all that important because the shutter speed doesn't affect the pupil itself. These are the eyes of a young lady, and this is what her eyes looked like in normal room lighting when she was a teenager. She was not stoned, she was not on drugs, but she was very high strung and she was very anxious, very anxious. So we've got frontal lighting here. How many of you have Iridology cameras? If you've got a camera, give me camera in the chat box, like a real camera, not a smartphone with a lens on it, but a real camera. Janine has a camera. Okay. Anybody else? Joe has a camera. Excellent. Okay. So when we've got a camera, hopefully you've got the ability to change your lights around on there. And you should have the ability to do frontal lighting, which is at least two lights, and then side lighting, which is one light, and then side lighting with the other light, right? The reason I say that is because with frontal lighting, you will fill in anything that could be shaded, anything, and let me rephrase that, anything that could be in shadow, difference between shaded and shadow, right? So if you've got frontal lighting, you're going to hide all of the contraction furrows. Then we went to her with a brighter light. So same eye, brighter light. We can now actually see the color. We can see the fiber. And there's enough light that it's pulled her pupil size down. So as Janine said, the previous photo was mydriasis. Well, this one is more of a normal size, but it's artificially normal because of the amount of light going into her eyes. We still cannot see the contraction furrows. We can see little hints, little teeny bits of contraction furrow, but we're not really seeing them. The frontal lighting is filling in all of the dips. What happens when we turn one light off? Suddenly, my goodness, now we've got lots of contraction furrows. Okay. I like to highlight this. I had a student many years ago who was a naturopath. She was a well-trained iridologist. She was coming to me to refine her skills. She had a camera. And when we got to the module on contraction furrows, she said, well, I don't really need this. None of my clients ever have contraction furrows. And so we talked about her photographic process. And no one had ever suggested that she play with the lighting, that she turn lights on, she turn lights off, change the angle, whatever you can do, right? And so as we talked about that in class, she kind of went, well, no one's ever taught me that. The next day I got an email and she said, all of the clients I've seen today have contraction furrows. Now that I'm doing frontal lighting and then side frontal, she said, I am seeing contraction furrows. So this is a really important point. What do these contraction furrows tell us? These tell us that she internalizes her stress quite acutely. And that can be a challenge. She was the seventh of 7 children. And it was a slightly stressful pregnancy in that the family had had 5 children. Then they had 2 very late miscarriages back to back. And then the 6th live birth, there were some complications with the cord at birth. Baby was fine, mom was fine ultimately, but as the doctor delivered this baby with this cord that had a super tight knot in it, the doctor confirmed why the baby had pretty much almost stopped kicking at 30 weeks. So they go into, mom and the family go into a 7th pregnancy, and mom's a little anxious, just a little bit nervous. She's had 2 losses and then could have lost the 6th baby, right? And so mom was a little nervous. She might have been overreacting a little bit to every little burp and every little fart in the pregnancy. Her own adrenaline and cortisol, or adrenaline and noradrenaline, might have been running a little high. If she's got a lot of that in her bloodstream, that's going to cross the placenta, right? This baby is going to get that by the truckload, and her nervous system is going to be affected by it, right? That is not to guilt trip anybody. It is simply a statement of fact. And when we understand what's going on, we then also have the ability to work with it. Does that make sense? Vanessa says yes. Excellent. So, when I see things like this and I talk to the family and I say, find out the history of the pregnancy, the mom's history, all that good stuff. I'm never coming at it from an angle of, well, I'm blaming you. It's no, this is information that helps me understand how we need to work with this. No blame attached. I think any woman would be nervous in that situation, right? And so we love, we don't blame. So this young lady is a teenager, even though she was raised in a very holistic home. She was raised with really great food, good supplements, an intact family. When she got to be a teenager, she did what most teenagers do. She started eating junk food. She had her own money and she would do high carb junk food. Her mom would report finding like big gulp Slurpee cups under her bed and empty potato chip bags and the supersized bags of sour gummy candies. And it's like, every holistic mother's nightmare kind of thing. And so we tried to get this young lady to take some supplements, right? Some supplements to support her nervous system, because she was clearly physiologically in a situation where she needed a lot more very focused, very strong nutritional support. But we really struggled. She just could not get consistent. She would take supplements for a day or two, and then she would forget. And then to try to get her to start again was just about impossible. As she's gotten older, she's in her mid-20s now, and she is still a client of mine. She has gotten more aware of how her food choices affect her. She still is not good with taking supplements, but now she is aware that, and she still eats a lot of junk food, but she's also aware that, when she sits down to a meal, if there's good food presented, she should eat that. And she shouldn't have junk food right before a family meal, because the junk food will make it so she won't eat the family meal. So she's getting a little bit better. As she works with trying to make better food choices, we are finding that her history of panic attacks is starting to calm down, right? She's not having them nearly as often. And so that's a good thing. And, I believe that with this young lady in particular, if we could find a way to help her internalize the habit of supplements and good diet, that we could stop the panic attacks. Now, we need to remember that the eyes don't tell us she's under stress. I've seen this on social media where people look at this and they say, oh my goodness, you are under so much stress, you're headed for a nervous breakdown. These do not tell us she is under stress. They tell us how her body handles the adrenaline, noradrenaline. They tell us that emotionally she's more prone to internalizing her stress, right? And so that means that when she's well nourished, she's going to handle things better. So my experience in all these decades has been that when I see contraction furrows and the person is not well nourished, we are going to see a lot of poor food choices, and we're going to see a lot of more predisposition towards anxiety and panic attacks. Okay. And you know what do we know about high carb? It triggers dopamine, right? So she's medicating with carbs, which is not the best way to do it because there's diabetes in her family line, right? Type 2 diabetes. So we're really working on trying to get her kind of moved over a little bit. These are the eyes of a little girl. She was about 2 years old when we took these photos. Look, even with the frontal lighting, can you see the layers and layers and layers of contraction furrows in here? If you can see that, give me layers in the chat box. Yeah, you can see that, right? We've got one, two, I mean, we've got just rings and rings and rings in here. Now, this is interesting because, again, this is inherent, and this is also from the pregnancy. Okay, and I'm going to show you why. This is her family. This is her dad. This is her mom. This is her. So her dad, lots of contraction furrows. Her mom, lots of contraction furrows. When these two parents conceived this little girl, their relationship was not good. There was a very, very good chance that this couple was not going to be a couple by the time the baby was born. And as a result, the mother was really, really tied up in knots. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Who wouldn't be with that kind of instability when you're pregnant? And so this little girl had all of that adrenaline and noradrenaline exposure, all of it. When this little girl was quite young, she is 9 years old now. When she was about 4, we were invited to go and watch one of her soccer games, which we were happy to do. We love this little family. And so we went to watch this soccer game. And at 4 years old, they really don't play soccer, do they? They kind of kick the ball and run after it and kick the ball. And they're on this little hive running after the ball. And nobody knows what they're doing for sure, except for her. She was so afraid of making a mistake on the field that rather than being in that hive, she stayed off in the corner of the field by herself. She was so anxious about making a mistake. And by then the parents had worked things out, and they're very loving, very lovely parents in every way, shape, and form. But what this little girl had internalized from all of those surges of hormones when she was gestating was anxiety about she had to be perfect. And so they've really worked with that. Both the parents became life coaches, and they now are raising their daughter with a lot of life coaching philosophies, which is really great because they're teaching her a lot of good coping skills. Right? So that's great. This is a little 2-year-old. She's a 3rd-generation client for me. And so I took care of this little girl's grandma when she was having this little girl's mom. And then this little girl's mom came to me about a year before they wanted to conceive this little girl. And she said, I want to get ready to get pregnant. What do I do? My favorite kind of clients, the ones who prepare for pregnancy, right? So, and this is another intact home. This little girl's mom cooks everything from scratch. Most of it's organic. I mean, really high quality, wide variety of food, just really, really a great situation. Loving extended family. It's all really good. But at 2 years old, this mom brought her little girl in and said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, my sweet little girl has started having meltdowns. And when she's having a meltdown, she can scream for 8 hours straight. There's no way to distract her. There's no way to calm her down. She just goes for 8 hours. She doesn't even tire herself out to fall asleep. She just goes. And I said, well, what could set her off? Well, she loses her blanket. if she loses her favorite stuffy, if she loses, if I don't give her the things she wants. And wasn't a spoiled little girl. This was just really all of a sudden, we've got this little girl hitting the terrible, terrible twos, which it really wasn't. So look at the contraction froze in this eye. Now, this little girl's, her gestational time was not high stress. Her mom did work through the pregnancy, but it was a job she'd done for a long time, very busy job, but mom knew how to do it. So there wasn't much that got under her skin, but this little girl still inherited this. I haven't seen the dad's eyes, so I don't know if the dad has a lot of these and if that was in his DNA. What these contraction froze tell us is that this little girl burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium with record speed. Her body just hoovers them up and just, oh my goodness, burns through them. This little girl needs a truckload of those in order to balance her nervous system. So I asked the mom about the diet, knowing full well the diet was whole foods, lovingly prepared and prepared very healthfully. This little girl was a fruitaholic. Her mom said she could eat fruit all day, every day, and never eat anything else. And as a result, mom thought fruit is healthy, therefore I will let her eat fruit. So this little 2-year-old was having 6 to 8 servings of fruit per day, vegetables a little bit at supper time, now and a little bit of protein every now and then, but it wasn't the nutritional balance this little girl needed. So we talked about how that should be reshaped for our climate. We don't grow fruit here in the winter. We really don't. In fact, we won't have strawberries on the vine until maybe the end of June. We'll get cherries in from BC end of June, middle of July. We won't get fresh apples, pears, plums until later in the summer, right? So we're not a fruit zone here, except for berries. Raspberries will be on before that as well. So I said to the mom, we don't want to do that much fruit. I want you to cut her back to 1 serving of fruit a day. And a serving is, we're going to say, the size of her closed fist, not very big for a 2-year-old. I said everything else is going to be proteins, veggies, and good fats. And the mom kind of went, oh, how am I going to do that? And I went, I don't know, but you're the mom. I'm sure you'll figure it out, right? And so that's exactly what they did. We also used a liquid B vitamin complex that had methylated Bs in it. I think that was really important here as well. Was interesting that literally within a few days, I got an email from the mom saying, oh my goodness, my little girl is back. I said, tell me more. And she said, well, now the first day or two were challenging, but now that we've got her off the fruit and on to protein at breakfast with a good quality carb, there's a little fruit snack mid-morning and protein and veg at lunch and protein and veg at supper. My little girl is so much more even. Now, when there's a problem, we can talk it through. We can reason it out at her level, and it's golden. It's all working out. So really important that we recognize that it's not just about what vitamins and minerals do these contraction froze teach us about, but how does that play into the symptoms the person has? How does their diet and lifestyle add to that? If we had given this little girl B vitamins and that was it, maybe some calcium and magnesium and some vitamin C, we might have seen a little improvement, but we wouldn't have seen everything that we did see when we changed out the fruit, right? Right? So we need to remember that the eyes don't show us deficiencies. This doesn't say she is deficient in B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. It says she assimilates those nutrients very quickly. Now, when she's getting those nutrients in the amount she needs, she's going to feel more in control, more balanced. These are still going to be in her eyes. If her nutrition is deficient in those, we're going to see the behaviors. We might see other things crop up for having low B vitamins, especially. These are still going to be there. These are not going to disappear. They're not going to get worse. They're not going to get better. They're just going to be there. You will hear some people say, when they look at what they call before and after photos, that the contraction furrows have gotten much lighter. When people say that, I want you to look at the size of the pupil, and I want you to look at the amount of light used on the photo. Chances are 9 out of 10, or even more, that the light is brighter and or the pupil is smaller. And as that stretches that iris tissue out, it's going to flatten out the contraction furrows somewhat, which is going to make them look less shadowed. And people say, well, that means they're healing. No, it doesn't. It means we shrunk the pupil and stretched the tissue. That's not healing. That's just a change of how the pupil is sitting. Does that all make sense? If it is, give me pupil in the chat box. Yeah, Vanessa, making sense for you. Michelle, yeah, fantastic, fantastic. And Melissa, good job. Excellent, excellent. For those of you who've done iridology for a while, is any of this new? Or is any of this explaining things on a deeper level for you? That's the very least I would hope for. That this is giving you an extra layer of information. If it is, give me layer again in the chat box. Elizabeth says she knows lymphatic looking to expand. Excellent. Janine says it's explained different. Everybody else is saying, yeah, it's adding to their information. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. So good. So good. Karen Choate's another one of my grads. And she is a certified iridologist. This is taken right off the IPA site, and only IPA members are allowed to post there. And usually if you're an IPA member, you're probably certified. So Karen graduated several years ago, and this is what she said. Judith Cobb has been one of the teachers who's made a difference in my life. She's a born teacher, meaning she has incredible knowledge to share in her field of expertise, patience with her students, whether you are completely new to the field or a person who has taken iridology courses with other teachers. And most importantly, the passion to ensure all of her students are well-versed, comfortable with what they've learned, and are poised for success. Judith has always been generous with her time and is always willing to discuss any questions that I occasionally have had with unusual cases in my practice. I began implementing what I had learned in her course into my practice before I had even finished her classes, and it has been an invaluable tool in my office. I cannot say enough about Judith and any course that she teaches, and if you are considering studying iridology, look no further. All right. I really like to have students who are happy with what they've learned. That really does work for me. So here we have a young boy. He came to me when he was about 10 years old, and both of his parents came to every appointment, which I thought was amazing. The family had 2 children, this boy and a daughter. The parents brought him in because he was being assessed by the school psychologist and the family doctor for ADHD, right? So, and when we look at ADHD, I nearly graduated as an elementary school teacher. And this is when I hear of children being diagnosed as with ADHD or ADD, I think that the problem 9 times out of 10 isn't with the child. It's with the teaching modalities. I love what Janine is saying. If these master classes are full of so much information, I can imagine your classes are super great and full of information. Yeah, Janine, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're just skimming the surface here, just skimming the surface. So back to this young man and education. You know, when I was in university preparing to be an elementary school teacher, we were taught that children are active and different children learn different ways. And to me, what that means is if you've got a child with ADHD, they are a kinesthetic learner. They need to learn with their body. They don't need to sit at a desk with their head down looking at a piece of paper, right? And so I get a little bit cranky when we've got school systems that are so overburdened and teachers who are school systems that are not able to accommodate easily children who learn in a different way, right? So this boy was being assessed for ADD, ADHD, and we brought him in. We looked at the family dynamics, which were lovely, absolutely lovely. Nutrition was a little off. It was a little bit better than standard North American. At least they were eating meals as a family most of the time, even if it was in the car, going through drive-through to get to soccer practice or swim or whatever, right? Breakfast was often things like an Eggo waffle in the toaster with pancake syrup or a cold cereal. They tried to not do too many that were sugary, but it would usually just have regular milk, and sometimes the kids would add sugar to it, and there would often be a juice like beverage with that. This little boy would take his lunch to school, and it was usually processed ham, processed cheese on white bread with like a fruit roll up kind of a thing, and another, you can call it a juice box if you want, but it's the drinking boxes that are full of colored sugared water. And then at home, because evenings were so busy with these kids and their extracurricular, it was either drive through or it was pasta, because those are really quick and easy. All right, so we had to talk about easy swap outs. This is a busy family. Both parents work full time. And if I'm suggesting gourmet from scratch, it's not going to happen, right? So we had to strategize. What could we do at breakfast? Was there time to make some buckwheat pancakes? So we have this really great brand here in Alberta that's made by a private group. It's made by on a Hutterite colony, actually. And it's a buckwheat pancake mix, and it's like buckwheat and baking soda and salt in it. You just add eggs and if you want to put sugar in it, and some milk. And so it's really a fairly clean product, right? So I said, could you make pancakes? Even make a batch of them on the weekend and freeze them individually and warm them up. And can we swap out margarine for real butter? Can we swap out real maple syrup for the pancake syrup? Can we do, if we're going to do juice, can we do juice like real juice, but water it down 50%? And could we put some protein with that? Would he have an egg with that, for instance? Or even a few strips of bacon? Could we get some protein in? Those were really easy swaps. The family went, absolutely, that would be easy. Great. Let's talk about lunch. Could we use a multi-grain, like a sprouted grain bread? Yes, we could. Could we use, I'm not going to pick on the ham just yet. That's a harder one to swap out to get an all natural sandwich meat. Could we use real cheese? Yeah, we could do that. Could we use real butter in his sandwich? And, does he do mustard or mayonnaise or something? And can we just do, keep that really good? Yeah, we can. Instead of a fruit roll up, could we send a piece of fruit or a little package of berries or something? Absolutely. Great. Now that box that he's drinking out of, we'd really like him drinking water at lunchtime. Just a little bit. We don't want him drinking like 16 ounces with his lunch. That's not going to help anything. But if he needs a beverage, could it be water? Well, I said, well, could you get a really snazzy water bottle, like something that's really cool? Yeah, I don't know. I'm way out of the having kids in my home scene. So can you get a water bottle that is the cartoon character of the month kind of thing? And would that help? Oh yeah, that would be a great idea. So we had them do that. Then we needed to talk about the evening meal, because that was also rushed, right? So talked to the mom and said she was doing most of the evening meal prep, even though dad does help with that. And he was here, so he heard the whole conversation. And I suggested, could we do something in a slow cooker? You can make slow cooker lasagna. You can make a soup or a stew. You can roast a chicken and vegetables in a slow cooker over the day, right? Could we think of maybe a little bit of menu planning, maybe on Saturday or Friday night, you menu plan for the week, make sure you've got the groceries in. And then in the morning, before you leave for work, you just throw everything into the slow cooker. You come home and it's ready made. And she went, oh, I'd never thought of that. She said, yeah, we got a slow cooker. I just never thought of using it that way. And so they started doing that. We did use some supplements. Now, what kinds of supplements do you like to use with ADHD? What kinds of supplements do you like to use with ADHD? Omegas. Oh yeah, Michelle, I agree. Omegas, so good. GABA and omegas. Yes, 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 yes. Anything else? Bacopa. Oh, that's an interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Magnesium. Uh-huh. I love the way you're thinking. This is how I teach iridology in the course as well. As we go through, I'm asking you questions. I want you to draw what you know into what we are learning, because the sooner you integrate your existing knowledge with this, the more useful iridology will become for you, right? If we leave what you know and iridology as two separate things, it becomes really hard to get them to connect later on. So we start literally from the get-go, from the second module, we are talking about what do you already know? How do we draw that in? So here's some other things that I used and thought of. Again, because what we're looking at here is a nervous system imbalance, right? So omega-3, absolutely. I have a really great tasting liquid omega-3 that's not a capsule because he doesn't swallow pills yet. So I'm not going to torture him and try to make him do that at this stage. Lemon balm and chamomile, really, really great here. If I see any indicators, and I did see a few in his eyes that suggest that the liver might need some support, then I would add some liver support. You know, for a young child, so many of the liver herbs are really disgusting tasting, and you're going to have a hard time getting them in. But remember the B complex. The B complex is all about liver support, right? So I would go with a methylated B, which we did with him. We used a liquid methylated B to support the liver, right? I would also really focus on using liquids, because we can get liquids down pretty quick. And at his age, he can understand that, yeah, I need to take this little half a teaspoon full of this yucky thing, but then mom says I can have a sip of juice afterwards, right? Or I'm going to have my pancake with the maple syrup on it, and that's going to help it work out. So we did that as well. We want to remember that the liver makes the cholesterol that is necessary for making the neurotransmitters, right? So if the liver's not making the cholesterol, we're not going to get the neurotransmitters. We want to make sure that the liver's being supported in its phase 1 and phase 2 detox, because a body that is not detoxifying is going to have stuff build up. Janine says, wouldn't it be good to support the pancreas as well? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Now your challenge with bitters is, again, getting them down a young child's throat, right? And so it's just, how do we do that? And yeah, but you're absolutely on the right track. Elizabeth says zinc, absolutely some zinc in there as well. So interesting story. We had worked together for several months, and we were seeing some really good results. His mother sent me an email one day, and she said, I need to tell you how he's doing. And she said, I broke my ankle a week or two ago, and I had to have surgery. So I'm laid up. I can't put any weight on this. I'm kind of stuck in bed, you know, unless I can get out of bed and, you know, get to the living room, then I'm stuck on the couch. She said, so the other night I called my son into my room and I said, hey, do you want to play cards? He said, sure, mom. So Old Maid or Go Fish or something like that, Crazy Eights or something. And they got through a game, and he said, you want to play again, mom? And she said, sure. So they played again. They got through the second game, and he said, do you want to play again, mom? And she said, absolutely. They got halfway through the second game when he kind of went, yeah, I'm done, right? What she was telling me after that was, he's never made it through one game, let alone 2.5. So she saw the improvement. It broke my heart that when he finished grade 6 here, at that point in time, elementary school was K through 6. Then we have junior high, which is 7 through 9, and senior high, which is 10 through 12. So he was finishing grade 6, going into grade 7. His mother sent me an email. I just about cried, because she said, we've seen a lot of good success with the work we're doing with you. We are afraid that it might not be enough, and that as he goes into junior high, he might not do well. So we are going to discontinue the supplements, and we are going to put him on Ritalin. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm hoping he has graduated high school and done well. Janine says you can create a paste with caps. So open the capsules with Manuka honey to help with certain supplements. TUDCA, butyrate enzymes. Bitters can be just a spray bottle, just a tip. Thank you, Janine. I appreciate that. That is really good information. This is an exact example of why I want my students to draw on what they know, because when they share it in the class, we all benefit. I know the iridology and I know a lot about herbs and a lot about nutrition, but all of my students have different backgrounds. And when they bring it into class and we share that together, it's really quite amazing, really quite amazing. Selena McKenzie said this: I just wanted to take a moment of your time and put out a huge thank you there. I've been learning so much in the first few weeks of class. It's been a true blessing. She actually was only about 4 modules in out of the 20. As an educator in my field of study, I feel as though I've taken so many continuing education courses, and I really appreciate your detailed course. I particularly enjoy being able to review the mini videos throughout my busy work week. I've always learned best by audio and really feel that it's the glue in your course for me. I'm super excited to see what's in store in the coming weeks. I'm so looking forward to being able to build this amazing process into my practice. I think it'll be well received by all of my clients, young and old. Very cool. Very cool. Here's another lovely young lady. History of anxiety and depression, postpartum depression as well. Okay, and with her, before she got pregnant with her second child, she was on an antidepressant, and the doctor recommended that she stay on it through the pregnancy and beyond. We've worked with that, and we've got her off that partway through the pregnancy and got her onto a herbal blend, which works just as well for her. So she now has 2 young children. Her oldest is 5 years old, and he has special needs. He's on the autism spectrum, and he was speech delayed. And so he can be a little bit challenging. And their younger child, the 2-year-old daughter, has no special needs that we're aware of yet. She seems to be quite normal in every way. Both of the children were breastfed, the oldest for 2 years, and the youngest one is 2.5 years, and mom can't get her to quit breastfeeding. So, you know, there comes a point in time for many women. I felt that way, that I got to that point where it's just, give me back my body. Like, I'm done being touched. I need a break before I have another baby, right? And that's where this woman is. This woman wanted a non-pharmaceutical way to deal with the anxiety, the PPD, all of that. She needed a way, something that would help her to sleep, but allow her to be clear-headed and very level and even the next day. So when she opted to stop the medication, we experimented a bit to figure out which things she would do the best on. And where we landed was a Nature's Sunshine product. Here in Canada, it's called STRJ. I think in the US, it's called Stress J. And she just loves it. We've got her on a really good prenatal vitamin from Designs for Health and this STRJ. And it just really works well. If you need links to any of those, just let me know and I can make sure they get sent out when I send the replay out tomorrow. So there's a couple of things here that we know about her, that her stress levels run high. She works 2 part-time jobs that are both really weird hours. One of them, she's a swim instructor lifeguard, and the other is she's a dance instructor. So dancing is in the evening at the dance studio, and the other one is, you know, weekdays, bits and pieces here, and Saturdays kind of thing. Her diet is not meeting her nutritional needs. So those are 2 things that play against her when we see these contraction furrows. Again, she's busy. She's got these 2 young kids. She manages the house. She's got a great husband, but her schedule is all over the map. And so she doesn't eat as conscientiously. And with having a special needs child, she's often cooking to try to find something that he will eat. Often children with autism have textural issues, or, you know, if they get set on a certain thing that they want a certain thing, there's absolutely no way you can get them to eat anything else. And so often what she's eating is what her 5-year-old will eat, which is not necessarily the best thing. So again, we've got her on the STRJ, we've got her on a good prenatal vitamin, and periodically we'll tuck something extra in for a month or two, and we'll monitor how's that working for you, depending on what her symptoms are and where she's needing support. I do try to coach her on her foods, but again, that's a really difficult situation when you've got a child who, I'm not going to call him a picky eater, because he's not being picky to be obstinate. He's being picky because that's a part of his condition, right? And so I can say, well, you need more fruits and veggies, but if the son is not going to eat them, it's really hard to prepare two separate meals, right? So there's a little bit of a challenge with that. So we're working on trying to find other ways to help her through that. So in the meantime, we do continue to work with the supplements. We encourage her to try to sleep well. It's really hard because her nursing toddler still wakes up in the night to nurse, and that's not good for mom's sleep. So there's a lot of things affecting it. And if we can get the toddler to wean, then we can get mom some sleep, and we can get her built up for another pregnancy, which she's hoping for over the summer. So we've really got some work ahead of us. But again, the history of anxiety, postpartum depression, and we watch her for that now. Right? When she's pregnant, we watch her carefully. And if we see any inklings that she's starting to slip at all, we get in there and we rejig her program, add some omegas, add some essential oils to lift her mood. And we do that very carefully when she's pregnant, of course. And we just work very carefully and very conscientiously and very specifically to try to bring things around for her. Here's a young man he was 24 years old when we took these photos. And he also has a really, really strong history of anxiety and depression. Very poor diet. He is Filipino, living in Canada. And what I have found with virtually every one of my clients who has immigrated particularly from a third world country, is they bring the worst their country has to offer, which is usually abundant white rice and lots of refined carbs and lots of sugar. And they layer on top of that the worst of what we have to offer. It doesn't get better on its own, right? And so we've really had to work with this fellow because he has a very poor diet. Everything is carbohydrate, lots of fast food. Just really not great. A very inactive lifestyle, no physical activity whatsoever. He did go through a spurt where he was going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week with a friend, and that was working really well. And then the friend moved to another city and he won't go on his own, right? So again, the eyes don't tell us he's under stress. Certainly the sclera tells us he's under lots of chemical stress, right? That there's a lot of inflammation in his body. The irides, however, don't tell us that he's under stress. They tell us that he internalizes his stress and he burns through those nerve nutrients very quickly. They give us a clue as to how he may respond to stress, because if you burn through those nerve nutrients really quickly, you don't have the resilience to handle stress gracefully, right? You're going to get depressed, or you're going to get angry, or you're going to get anxious. Something's going to happen, and it's not going to be a response that is, I can handle this. I can do this. It's going to be tough, but I can do it. It's going to be collapse and crumble, right? And that's exactly where he spends a lot of his time. And so with him, again, it comes down to educating him, which did that sigh say it all? Working with a young Filipino fellow who wants to feel better, but doesn't seem to want to understand the importance of his diet and his lifestyle. He also has gout, by the way. And so he typically, whether he's on an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety, or an anti-gout medication, or all three at the same time, which can happen with him, right? He just figures the drugs are going to take care of it. And so I work with him. He's a family member by marriage. He's one of my sons-in-law. So we work with him very gently, very gently. How many of you have children-in-law? You've got children that are married. Just let me know if you've got kids that are married. Just could be married in the chat box. Janine says, yeah. Okay. Tell me if you've learned this lesson. You can tell your own kids what to do, but you can't tell your in-law children what to do. You really just need to love them and set an example, right? Love them and set an example. Is that what you find? That you just need to love them and set an example for them? So being as he is our son-in-law, when they come for dinner, we really strive to make sure that it is really lovely vegetables. We do a lot of wild game here, really lovely wild game. That there's, if it's dessert, it's something that's homemade, it's low sugar, it's, it might be like a peach cobbler, but it's all totally homemade, home bottled peaches, just everything, so that we try to model for him better food. And, when he comes over now, it's like, I really like these vegetables when you make them like this. I really like salad the way you make it. So we're getting there. He won't make it himself yet, but we're getting there, right? And if I had my way with him, he would be on a methylated B. He would be on omegas. We would be doing pancreas support because he craves the sugars and he drinks a lot of soda pop. And we would be, I would be encouraging him to get more protein in his diet because I don't think he gets enough. I would be encouraging him to really just focus on cleaning things up. I wouldn't actually take anything away up front. I would put things in. And the idea would be to get him, instead of pop, I'd be saying, hey, how about water for a beverage? Could you drink 3 glasses of water a day? Well, if he drinks 3 glasses of water a day, he's probably got less room for some of the pop and he'll drink less pop, right? If I can get him to eat eggs for breakfast and take a protein digestive aid with that, something to break the eggs down, then he's less likely to do a drive-through of an Egg McMuffin, which I'm not even sure what's in an Egg McMuffin, right? Except for fake cheese and white flour bread, right? So we would work with what can we introduce with the hope that we are crowding things out. That way, he doesn't feel like I'm telling him he's wrong, which I think is a real danger we run into, especially with our children. I prefer to call them children from another mother. That we don't want them to feel like we're saying they're wrong and we're better. So if we can introduce things that crowd out some of their bad habits, then it's their choice to crowd them out, right? Gentle, gentle, gentle. I've learned gentle is good with my children from another mother. Yeah. All right, so the dynamic iridology assessment system for health professionals, if you've loved what you've heard today, if you love the depth, if you love that it's not just iridology, but it's practical application here, that's exactly what I teach in the dynamic iridology assessment system program. It is the only live, online, fully mentored course for, and when we read this list, what I want you to hear is people who already have a college level anatomy and physiology course completed. Nutritionists, herbalists, naturopaths, could be RMTs, EMTs, LPNs, lots of different people who've got that A&P. That A&P is so important for us to understand the connections that we're seeing in the eyes and to put together the story. Why do we want all of this? Why do we want it to be live instruction, live online, mentored? And that A&P is because we want you to be able to work with your clients in a way where you're not seeing your client and then going off and spending hours of your time unpaid creating a report and a protocol to bring back to them. I want to teach you how to use iridology in your clinical appointments so that you can actually do the assessment and the program creation in your appointment so that you can stop overwhelming your clients. If you spent 3 or 4 hours writing a report, or even 1 or 2 hours writing a report, I guarantee you, you're overwhelming your client. And overwhelmed clients don't follow the instructions well. And they don't come back because they don't want to tell you they didn't follow the instructions and they've not been successful. And so you don't get long-term retention. When we build their programs in session and tweak them in session, we create programs that they can be compliant with, they can be successful with, and that means long-term retention. I've got clients that have been with me for 4 decades. Actually, I have a couple that have been with me since the beginning, like for 45 years. 45 years. It's very cool. Very cool. So the next course is starting in September. But again, if you're keen to go and you've got that A and P and you go, yeah, I can come up with about 10 or 12 extra hours in the next week or two to get caught up, then we can even talk about the February 27th if you want to launch into that. And again, there's the link. And the purpose of a meeting with me is, if you've got, first off, that A and P, and with the A and P, then Elizabeth, I will send you the link. I'll make a note to send you the link for the A and P course, because I don't have that right at hand. All right. I'm going to answer Michelle's question in just a moment here. The purpose of our meeting is, number one, to make sure you've got your A and P, to give you a tour of the student site, to see if it has the materials that will help you, that you feel will help you to learn best. It's for us to make sure that this is what you want. And it's make sure we like each other enough to work together, because we work pretty hard together, right? And we need to have that good rapport. Michelle says, is it possible to do this over telehealth? I only see clients over Zoom. Michelle, your biggest challenge is you will at least need photos to work from. Photos are a challenge because, as if you've ever seen anything online, most of your clients will not take the time to get decent photos. They will likely only be able to get moderately useful iris photos. We also learned sclera. They won't be able to get decent sclera photos. And so your biggest challenge is they won't be able to get the right kind of photos to send them to you. And then you have the challenge of, you don't know how the technology has altered the colors, right? And I can show you, I can't show you, I don't have a client here right now, but when I look at my client's eye color and I look at the color that shows up on my camera, and then I look at how that translates when it's on one of my 2 large computer screens. I've got 2 different models of computer screen. Each and every one of those shows a different color. And that changes the assessment. So it's really ideal if you can at least do one appointment face-to-face to take the photos yourself, so you know what conditions those photos were done under, and you then understand how your technology alters the colors. And then you can do telehealth after that. Like, I've got a lot of people I work with long distance. I have them come in once a year for photos, and all of the rest of the appointments that we need to do in between those annual appointments, we do over Zoom. Yeah, so you can do telehealth, but you really need to be able to control the parameters of the photography. Janine says that is true. The color change, it is so true. It is so true. And it's something that a lot of people that show before and after photos don't take into account. I will guarantee you, when you see someone saying they've done before and after photos and look at the color change, because I did this fast, I did this cleanse, I did this, I spent $5,000 and look at what I've got now. Look at the technology, and you can tell by looking if it was the same camera, because the lighting will either be identical or it will be different. And I will guarantee you, in every case where you see a radical change, the camera is different. That instantly nullifies your comparison. That means the lighting is different. That nullifies your comparison. Even the shutter speed will change the output. Your f-stop on your camera will change the output. So yeah, so you really need to have control of it. Yeah. We're almost there with the tech, just not quite. Tech has come so far in the 45 years that I've been involved with this. So far, it's really pretty exciting. And the developments in iridology over the last 45 years have been radical. What we know now is not what we knew 45 years ago. Not by a long shot. And we've left a lot of that 45-year-old information behind, because we've proven that much of it was not complete or was actually incorrect. And as more information is coming out, we're getting better and better information that is much more accurate. All right. One more note from a client, Joyce Lee, clinical aromatherapist. I took an iridology course from another school a few years ago, but I was left feeling inadequately trained and with no confidence in the material or my abilities to perform accurate assessments. Judith Cobb, on the other hand, is a wonderful instructor. She presents the material in this course in a concise, organized way. She clearly answers every question asked, no matter how trivial the student may think it is. Judith structures the classes in a way that makes them incredibly interesting. Clarification is clearly established through her instruction, discussion, and student participation. Upon completion of Judith's course, I feel very confident in my abilities and excited to offer iridology services to my clients. This course is an incredible value, highly recommended. So there's that information again. And, if you're looking for a course and you're thinking either September or the one that just started a few weeks ago, sounds like a good fit, hop on a link, use that link, and let's hop on a meeting and let's talk about it. Let's see where we're at. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Are there any final questions before we wrap up? I really appreciated all your interaction tonight. That was so good. So good. We're good? Okay. You're welcome. You're so very welcome. And there's lots of things coming in, so thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Janine says she will be in the September class. Yes, Janine. Yeah, looking forward to that. I'm just going to make sure I've made a note so we can stay in touch about that. Fantastic. Okay. Well, with that, my friends, I'm going to log off and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Do watch your email for tomorrow for the replay. And remember to check junk, spam, promo, and all mail because sometimes the replays end up over there. All right. So take good care. Have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.